Hi guys, welcome back to Ask Ornstein. This week I'm joined by the Athletics Newcastle correspondent Chris Waugh to discuss a miserable season on Tyneside with problems on and off the pitch. The Athletic is currently running a special price for new subscribers of less than £1 or $1 a week for the first 6 months. That's 40% off an annual subscription. Just head to theathletic.com/Ask Ornstein. That's theathletic.com/Ask Ornstein. Before we get started, a question for you. Will Newcastle stay up this season? Let me know in the comments below. Support for Ask Ornstein is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code ASK, that's ASK, at checkout. Chris, welcome. Thank you very much for your time. And let's get stuck in straight away. Give people watching this a flavour of what's going on at Newcastle right now, the feeling around the club. We had all of the stories about Steve Bruce and Matt Ritchie last week, another drab result over the weekend. And it just feels like, yet again, a miserable time for Newcastle United.
Yes, unfortunately so. I mean, thank you very much for having me on, but it seems that I'm always on these things. I'm the crisis correspondent to a certain degree. There's always an issue at Newcastle United. It's never a positive one, but there is genuine trepidation on Titus, certainly amongst the supporters. And I think that a lot of supporters are concerned about whether that's felt internally at the club, whether there is the same sense of urgency. And everything that came out last week about Matt Ritchie and Steve Bruce having this bust up on the training ground, and what that actually means and how reflective that is of the problems inside the club. And a lot of fans see that as basically just being symptomatic of the wider issues that are basically dragging Newcastle towards the Championship at the moment. So that was a flare-up, which, given that Matt Ritchie is a senior player, given he is someone who Steve Bruce was influential in getting a new contract for just last year, it shows really, or at least hints at some real problems which seem to be under the surface.
Yeah, let's drill into those a little bit, because that story, and we actually documented it in a piece I would urge everybody watching this to go and have a read of, because it doesn't just talk about the Matt Ritchie, Steve Bruce situation, but a lot of issues around it. It sort of says to me, as a bit of an outsider who's not on the patch like you are, that Steve Bruce has, to coin that horrible phrase, lost sections of the dressing room for sure. There is clear tension there. My information is that Steve Bruce has firm support from Mike Ashley, Newcastle's owner, and I've even received some indications that the view at the top of Newcastle is that Steve Bruce is here to stay and the players need to get their act together. And that may well even continue into the Championship if Newcastle are relegated. Mike Ashley does not want to get rid of Steve Bruce. Now, we know how these things can change in football. They often do. But that's a pretty interesting stance to take, given the feeling of many of the supporters, given the feeling of many of those players. And it doesn't feel conducive to a successful survival bid. I want to direct you to a question that we've had from one of our subscribers called Gavin, who says, we're going backwards under Bruce. There's no doubt about it. Entertainment, fans attending, statistics all show this. So why is he still in the job? This is obvious to everyone but the board by the looks of it.
Yeah, and it's very well put, and everything that you've said there, David, sort of backed it up as well. It's at any other club, I think, just about, if they'd gone on a run of 2 wins in 18 games, if they'd gone from sort of mid-table security to suddenly now only being 1 position above the relegation zone, I think we would all be saying that they're probably going down, and there's going to be a change. Whereas Newcastle United don't tend to act like that. That's not how. There was a quote from Lee Charnley in January 2015 when Alan Pardew left, and it was very interesting because he said that we appoint managers for the long term. We back them. We will have turbulent times, and we know that, but we want to stick with them because we see them as being the right person for the job. Now, a lot of Newcastle fans will contest that Steve Bruce, they believe, wasn't the right man for the job to begin with, but Newcastle appointed him. He still has at least another year left in his contract, and there is quite a sizable clause if he is sacked that they would have to pay him off. So I think that is part of the reasoning for Newcastle. Yeah, they want to avoid at all costs, if possible, to have to pay him off. That is where the concern is from supporters, that Newcastle didn't learn in 2008 or 9, they didn't learn in 2015-16 and make a change soon enough, and that's why supporters fear that the same is happening again and that relegation is now becoming increasingly more likely.
I've spoken to quite a few people at and around Newcastle who say this is a club crying out for a technical director, head of football operations, call it what you like. Many of the other clubs do have this role. At Newcastle, it's sort of Mike Ashley, the board, Lee Charnley, and he does the contract transfer negotiations. There is a head of recruitment in Steve Nixon. But is that, in your view, something that needs to be addressed urgently? Because I, as an outsider, have just been watching Newcastle go through crisis after crisis, pretty much since the sort of the period where Kevin Keegan's side challenged Manchester United for the Premier League title. Someone to pull all of this together, the recruitment, all these issues on the training ground, the dressing room, the accusations about too many days off. All of this sort of nonsense, to want of a better word, should really fall under the responsibility of a sporting director, director of football, technical director.
Nonsense is quite an apt word because it's a one Steve Bruce uses quite a lot himself when he talks about things. But it's a very good point that you raise. And if you just look at Newcastle United as the size of the club, I mean, obviously pre-pandemic, turnover-wise, they're turning over £150 million a year. If you just even a different, not a football club, just a business of that size would have a board, say, of 7 to 12 members. Most Premier League clubs do. Newcastle United only have one registered director in Lee Charnley. So that in itself, that shows the pared down nature of the entire club. They don't have enough expertise just about it at any level. They don't have the depth of knowledge that you need there. And so Lee Charnley has a heck of a lot on his plate to deal with. They don't have that football expertise. That's been an issue throughout the Mike Ashley era, that probably a lot of the mistakes that he's made is because he's listened to people who don't have that footballer knowledge. It's just been a club that's drifting. Someone described it to me last June as a ghost ship club, and yet it is just someone within the club, and it has only become worse in the months since. And that is the problem, that nobody knows where and what Mike Ashley is actually trying to achieve with it.
And what about Graeme Jones? I don't want to get you in trouble with this question, but there has been a lot of speculation about exactly who decided to bring him in, who gave their blessing to it. And it was clearly designed to bring about an upturn on the training pitch, which in turn would hopefully lead to better results.
Yeah, well, the Graeme Jones situation is strange. And again, it's almost like the left field nature of Mike Ashley. It's in one source I spoke to suggested this may be Newcastle's change. Rather than the change of manager, the change was to bring in an assistant manager and almost bring in the assistant manager bounce. And so there has been a lot of confusion and speculation as to who basically brought about that appointment. Steve Bruce did want another member to his backroom staff. He is adamant that he was the one behind that. I think other people at the club would argue that was the case, but I also think that there was maybe a limited number of candidates who the club were also willing to go for in that sense. And since he's come in, at least some sources suggest that Graeme Jones has taken over a lot of the training side of things, a lot of the technical side of things. Steve Bruce is still picking the team. He's still ultimately in charge, but there is a new voice, and he has been very respected by the players, Graeme Jones. They really like him. He has added, I think, more precision to exactly what Newcastle are doing on the training ground. But it just creates this strange tension, and certainly amongst supporters, they view it as a strange situation that Graeme Jones has come in. They have speculated as to whether, if there were to make a change and get rid of Steve Bruce, that Graeme Jones may step in. We do not know what Newcastle's plan is in that regard, but it has created a very strange dynamic whereby certainly early on, any success that Newcastle had, particularly when they won away at Everton, seemed to be of Graeme Jones's doing, and yet the subsequent issues have been Steve Bruce's fault. So it really has created this very strange dynamic.
You and I were part of a discussion this morning within The Athletic about relegation clauses. Some players have them in their contract, some players don't. So they're a bit of a mixed picture there of what would happen from that side of things. And it does actually quite nicely bring us on to our final subscriber question. Jake says, what do you see happening to Newcastle when they go down? The first relegation under Ashley, we had a solid group of veteran players who led us to promotion. The second time, we had a strong manager who was given carte blanche to tear down and rebuild the squad. Right now, we have neither.
It's an absolute heck of a question, and the last two times that Newcastle have gone down, Mike Ashley has made the decision that they have to come back up because he wants a Premier League club. The first time he was looking to sell in 2015-16, he wasn't necessarily actively looking to sell, whereas this time obviously he has a potential £305 million deal on the table to sell the club. But if Newcastle go down, then the valuation reduces massively, and he's shown no inclination in the past to want to accept a lower fee for it. Whether whether, given the pandemic and the fact that Newcastle are not in the same financial position they were beforehand, that has changed, is really an unknown question. And I think that part of the real concern for supporters and the real concern that there is around the club is that I don't think that they really have, as far as my understanding is, as far as I'm aware, the club may contest. I don't think there has been an acceptance that this could have been an eventuality. So I don't think yet they know what will actually happen if Newcastle go down.
Chris, thank you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Head over to The Athletic for much more on the situation at St James's Park. Plus, you can hear Chris on our weekly Newcastle podcast, Pod on the Tyne. Support for Ask Ornstein is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. The world is about to get a lot less hairy because you can now buy Manscaped products and finally use the right tools for your family jewels, like the Lawnmower 3.0 electric trimmer with its cutting-edge ceramic blade that reduces grooming accidents and keeps you feeling smooth. Its battery lasts up to 90 minutes, so you can even use it for the entire length of a football match. Then comes the Weed Whacker, your essential nose and ear hair trimmer. Both products are part of the Manscaped Performance Package that includes a t-shirt, athletic boxer briefs, deodorant, toner for, yes, down below, a wash bag to keep it all together, and a newspaper. Why? Well, why not? Happy shaving!